For more on the vote, then, we'll cross now to France 24's Europe editor, Armen, Georgian, standing by for us in Berlin. Hi, Armen. So you are actually more precisely near the AfD's headquarters, where we're seeing the start of some anti-far right protests. Tell us more about what's happening there.
Yeah, that's right, Aaron. There's not a huge gathering so far, but they are already sort of getting into the swing of things, chanting anti-AfD slogans, turning up the music pretty loud, as you can hear, and sort of getting closer to the security perimeter. There were a few people who looked to me as if they might be AfD supporters, kind of keeping an eye on things from the sidelines. But my feeling is that this could get quite heated later on because, as you were pointing out, we're looking at potentially a breakthrough, a doubling of the result of the AfD from the last parliamentary election. They are set to become the second largest party in the Bundestag, in the German parliament, even though, of course, the mainstream parties say that they're going to keep up this firewall to keep the AfD out of power. But we've seen some tensions really about this over the rise of the AfD. Indeed, when I arrived in Berlin, the center of the city bits of it were blocked off, much like here today with a big police presence and a security perimeter with pro and anti-AfD activists clashing. So I've got a feeling that things could get pretty intense here tonight.
So, Armen, polls have been pretty stable in terms of who's ahead in this election for the past couple of weeks, but obviously we won't know if those polls predictions were confirmed until later today. So what do we know about turnout thus far?
Well, turnout is shaping up to be quite significant. The latest figure I have is at 2 p.m., which was a turnout of 52%. That was announced by the person who's overseeing the election, and that suggests a possible increase on the last election. And also, if you look at the various German Länder, so the regions, in several of them, the turnout was higher around that time in the afternoon than it was at the same time 4 years, in 2021. And so what we're seeing is that a real kind of interest by people in this election, recognition that the stakes are high, that there is a particular international context which I've spoken to people who are very aware of it. That's to say, the whole security situation in Europe with what's happening around Donald Trump's administration, what they might be doing in terms of Ukraine, and perhaps even at some point pulling U.S. troops out of Germany. There's a very strong awareness that Germany has entered a new world order with Donald Trump, and that is definitely weighing on people's minds here.
Now, who that high turnout will benefit obviously depends on some of the other things that are motivating Germans to go to ballot boxes. You were, of course, at a polling station earlier. So what are the other things that you've heard from voters about their concerns, aside from the war in Ukraine and the Trump administration?
Well, the other things apart from those points were that social issues are still very important for people. And indeed, if you look at any election posters, you see a lot of mentions about, living standards and cost of living, the price of goods and so forth. All of these social issues are, of course, present in people's minds. And one couple that I spoke to at that polling station said that they regretted that those social issues have been somehow pushed into the background by the more recent focus on crime and security and immigration in this election campaign. One young man, by the way, said to me, I voted for a party which wants to get rid of the debt brake. And you might remember, Aaron, this is what the outgoing coalition actually fell apart over. It was the question of the debt brake, which really limits how much Germany can invest in things like defense. And a lot of people seem to feel that that is an outdated principle that should be reformed. And indeed, any future coalition is very much likely to take another look at the debt brake. I also spoke to younger voters who, of course, being the center of Berlin. They were quite left-leaning and were very, very concerned about the rise of the AfD. Indeed, you can see quite a lot of young people in the gathering behind me. But also, people were saying that there was the question I also put to them about were they decided about who they were going to vote for? Because a lot of pollsters here have been saying that there's a lot of undecideds in this election, perhaps between 20 and 22%. And I sort of try to tally that with people's reactions when I talk to them in the polling booth, and indeed I got the impression that especially among young voters and their groups of friends, there were a lot of people who really decided at the last moment, either in the last couple of days or even on the last day, or sometimes even in the voting booth itself. So that does create a bit of suspense as to what result we're going to get.
Indeed, sounds like there's room for quite a bit of surprise, not unlike some of the other big elections we've seen in recent years. Armen, Georgian, thank you very much.